Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the LifeVision Lab podcast, where we explore the science and soul of personal transformation, helping you find clarity, purpose, and balance in a noisy world. In North America, we just had our first snowfall of the season, and let's be honest, none of us were really ready for this. The first snow can feel like a shock to the system, and it did for me. Between shorter days, colder mornings, and everyone catching the seasonal flu, I was one of them too. I've been hearing so many people talk about winter blues and seasonal depression. And it makes sense when our external world feels heavy or gray. It's easy for our inner world to mirror that. But that is exactly why mindset, neuroscience, and emotional regulation are so important, especially now. Because the truth is, we can't always control the weather outside, but we can learn to navigate the storms within. And that's what today's conversation is all about. How to rewire your mind, shift your energy, and find happiness from within, even when everything around you feels completely out of sync. Joining me today is someone who embodies that message beautifully, David McKee, the founder of Another Angle Consulting, a global advisory firm that helps individuals and organizations achieve breakthroughs through psychology, neuroscience, and mindset coaching. David is known for his rare ability to simplify complex concepts, which I completely love, and make mindset work deeply human and practical. He's been featured in Artist Weekly and Rewire for his groundbreaking work with creatives, helping artists overcome emotional blocks and redefining how the music industry approaches mental health. He's also the author of an upcoming book called Navigate the Noise, set to release in 2026, which I can't wait to talk about later in this episode. David, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today on LifeVision Lab.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I'm so excited for our conversation today, David. Why don't we start from the beginning? You've built an incredible body of work helping people break through mental and emotional barriers, but I know this work comes from a very personal place. What first led you into the world of psychology and mindset coaching?
Sure. My dad was a Methodist minister, and due to a lot of things, but we find out that he got diagnosed that he was manic depressive and a bit of bipolar. And didn't find that out. Unfortunately, he was fighting a lot of those emotions on the mental health side, and no one really knew how to treat it, and made decisions that really broke up our family. And for the longest time, I held anger and resentment towards that. After about 15 years of holding on to that, from 6 years old, 8 years old to 21, 23, that I realized my life didn't get better from holding all that resentment and anger. I saw other people who are friends or family themselves who they had gone through something and still held on to that kind of anger and guilt and a why me type mentality. And it just really struck me that that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like that's how it should be. And it really was the design of why I named my company Another Angle Consulting. How can we look at what happened in a different way? How many times, if you can break stuff down to its simplest core, is we get scared, we get in bad situations, and as humans, we make mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are worse than others. But when I talk to people, I don't see people who just want to hurt other people. They feel like there's no other choice in the moment. I look back and I saw what my dad was going through. He was in his late 20s, early 30s, having kids very early, and he probably wasn't ready for it. And it was a lot of responsibility on him. I was able to see that his mental health was a major factor into what he was going on. And when I found out how hard he was dealing with just living every day, I could have 0 kids and I would have had trouble living what he was going through. He had a job, a family responsible for, and a lot of unprocessed trauma because his dad died when he was very young. He didn't know how to be a dad and he got scared of that. So it helped us repair our relationship later in life. It made me realize that there were so many people I wish I could talk to before they hit where my dad hit, making mistakes in those late 20s to early mid 40s. If we can get ahead of that, talk about these issues in advance and let people know there are other options, we can help limit those negative thoughts, rewire it, use our neuroplasticity, and find ways to just really be better and more live to our potential compared to always feeling like we're a result of our mistakes.
Thank you for being so transparent about it, David. It's amazing how a personal experience often becomes the foundation of our purpose, It's not amazing you went through it, but how you alchemized it to make it your life's purpose to help others find clarity and resilience through this work, right? You have such a gift for making neuroscience accessible. For those who are new to this, can you explain what neuroplasticity really means and why it's the cornerstone of mindset work? The reason I wanted to ask this specific question is I'm a yoga teacher trainer and I've done meditation teacher training as well. And a lot of times, breath work, especially Kundalini yoga, covers neuroplasticity, but we still don't understand how deep it can go to really work on our mindset and help us from that point of view. So I think it'll be really good if you can help simplify some of this for the viewers.
Sure. So neuroplasticity, in a very simple way of thinking, is doing things differently. And it's our ability to do things differently and think differently. There's not just one way of anything in life. Unfortunately, we usually default to our main course of action. What I like to bring up with neuroplasticity is the default mode network in our brain, which is when we kind of just go on auto mode. And there's a recent study where they said about 90 to 92% of what we do by the time we're 35 is automated. We're doing the same things almost every day. It's sleeping on the same side of the bed, scrolling right before you go to sleep, setting your alarm, and then when your alarm wakes you up, getting going. And where we can find little things within neuroplasticity to change neuroscience is we can find little talk about the last 10 minutes before you go to sleep, but the first 10 minutes when you wake up, your brain is in a partial theta mindset. So when your brain is in that theta pattern, you are more suggestible to your subconscious. It's why they say when you first wake up, say your affirmations in the mirror. To your point of what you said with Kundalini yoga is why there's neuroplasticity in there is you're breathing in a way that you don't normally breathe. And you're actively thinking, okay, I'm going to breathe this way. One of the best ways when we talk about raising your frequency or raising your vibration, however you want to say it, is just naturally doing breath work of breathe in for 3, hold for 3, breathe out for 3. And if you do that and slowly get into it, you start with breath work and then you think about gratitude. So there's ways that we can kind of stack and combo really simple things of just what your thoughts are, put those together, and it puts you in such a positive mindset and primes your brain for the positive. Whereas so much when we're in that autonomous zone, I like to say we prime the brain for the negative and we don't even know we're doing it half the time. So if we're really stressed about a work meeting tomorrow, and we go to sleep and we're looking at our phone, probably going to check our emails right before sleep to see if there's anything that popped up that I need to be ready for. And then you're already thinking, I got to be ready for this meeting tomorrow. So then you go to sleep, you're already in a somewhat stressed state because when you're in that partial theta before you're going to sleep, it's about anxiety and work, looking forward to something that may not be pleasant. And then when you wake up, you hit off your alarm. The first thing is you go into your phone and you look at your emails again. It's like, what do I need to prep for? So I always tell people, give yourself a little bit more time. If it's 5 or 10 minutes during that theta point, think about how you want the meeting to go. Think about the same thing. Don't even change. If you need to think about that, that's great. Think about how it could go right, how you envision it going. The more fear, anxiety that you have tied to it, your vision is shorter. You're not going to see as much as what's going on. You have very kind of tunnel vision. Whereas if you're calm about it, get ready for it. This is what some of the greatest athletes do all the time. Prime their brain that everything's going to go right. That way you expect things to go right. Even if things go wrong, you're projecting such confidence that people think, I'm not even going to question that. They're so confident in what they're doing. It's having that natural push of, okay, how can I think of this and push this in a positive way?
Honestly, David, I love that you simplify that because we do train our brain to think of the worst. And then when the worst does happen, you're like, how did this happen? But we're constantly preparing for the worst. And so it does end up happening. So when people say you manifest your reality, this is what it really means.
100%. The big thing that I get excited with this stuff, when you talk about law of attraction and manifesting, I love that that's become the common word and it's not in that woo-woo category that people shut down and don't want to talk about it. Almost everyone believes in manifesting to some extent. And I look back at a lot of the negative things, and I'm not saying I caused the negative things to happen to me in my life, but I expected bad to always happen. We have a reticular activating system. It's like a filter. It's essentially what you pointed at and what you tell it to think about, that's what you're going to think about. If you are always looking for how everything could go wrong, you're looking in your zone of vision for bad things to happen. You're expecting that. You're not looking for the good. And they've done multiple tests on this. There's this really cool newspaper test where they had and 2 types of people who considered themselves lucky and the people who considered themselves unlucky. And that was the only difference. They both got this same newspaper and they were given this task. go from beginning to end, count every picture, and at the end, tell me how many pictures there are in this entire newspaper. On page 2, when you got to it, there was like a little block in writing. And because it wasn't a picture, most people just jumped past it. But in that block of writing, it said, you don't need to count anymore. There's 46, whatever the number was, pictures. You can close the paper. You're done. And there was almost 100% that it was lined up to the people who saw that on page 2 and stopped were the people who considered themselves lucky. They were looking for everything because their vision was bigger. The other group, the unlucky people, didn't see it and were counting rapidly to get to the end of the paper. So think about that in life. How many opportunities might be right in front of our face, but because we're so narrow focused on whatever just hyper happening within our reality, we can't see what else is going on. So I'm a big believer of the more you can really fall into that positive mindset and be looking for positive things, it can be life-changing. It's almost like putting on a pair of glasses and getting a new prescription. I couldn't see before, but now I see everything. And it just kind of has that spiritual same type effect of what you would have just with your vision.
And like you said, I love that manifesting, law of attraction, etc., has become so mainstream and people everywhere are talking about it. And honestly, I was introduced to the concept back in 2016. And I didn't even know what it means when people would say law of attraction, manifesting. So I would just go through my own meditations. And I realized that's it. You constantly have to prime your brain. The brain doesn't know if it's true or not. It's just something that you keep feeding into it. Why do you think it's so natural for human beings to default into thinking of a negative outcome?
So I think there's a slew of things, but you take mainstream news, you take social media, you take all these other things, and a lot of them typically have psychological manipulation triggering type words. And I'm not using that in a bad way. People will use words. Where I tell people to look out for it is if you're trying to be informed and they're telling you how to feel. This is so upsetting. This is so awful. This is horrific. Words like that is they're telling you what's happening. And I'm of the mindset, I can think for myself. Just tell me the facts and I can make a reasonable explanation on that. So a lot of what we have coming to us is just kind of flooded in the negative, that it's all there. And then the big thing that was a game changer for me, and I think it is for a lot of people, is we don't know how negative our thoughts are until we start cataloging them. I got challenged by a mentor and it was life-changing for me. He said, write down every negative thought and neutral thought you have for the day. And whenever you have it, you have to write it down 5 times each time. It's like the old exercise of writing it on the chalkboard if you make a mistake. The whole idea was to try to catch it because so many times we will think something and then we react off of that and then we don't like our reaction and we're like, man, if I could have known in advance, I could have tried that. A lot of people don't even know they're thinking that. We're in that default mode network, autonomous zone. If we're automatically doing that, we're not really thinking. And it's a phenomena that I like to say that our body is calling all the shots and our brain's along for the ride. And we can really live life where our brain is calling all the shots and our body's along for the ride. And it's a lot easier when you're living that way. So if you have the changes, it's easy to change, but it's knowing there's a problem. Until you really shine light and focus on it, you might not even know it's an issue. And for me, I thought, I don't think that negative. I've always been told I'm a positive person and people think I'm very happy. I knew that I struggled with certain things, with some type of depression or trauma that I grew up with, but I didn't think I was a negative thinker until I did that exercise. And I don't quit at almost anything. I put my hands up after 3 hours and I was just like, whoa, how do I stop this? And he's like, no, complete it. And then he made me go for 24 hours and I did, even though I tried to quit. What that does is it now catches me when I think certain things. And it's a lot of it's limiting beliefs and it's the story we've been telling ourselves. And whether that's a story we've been directly telling ourselves or we were fed sometimes from our parents or our grandparents. I love my mom to death. She was an angel, but she gave me a lot of guilt trips. And I think a lot of parents of my generation did the same thing and get scared if we make a mistake. We should be okay and encouraged to make mistakes. There's been this study where they said the difference between super successful people and people who are maybe average or not really happy in life is not that we all fail. So that's the one given. We're all on that same level. We're all going to fail. We're going to have some level of failure. It's how fast are you able to get back up, lick your wounds, be over it and done. So a big part of what I do system-wise is...
And that's resilience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's being able to catch it and knowing I like to do this basic exercise. So I'll throw it at you because this is something I do with my clients all the time. Can you name me 3 really great decisions you made when you were really mad?
Nothing.
Okay. I bet you can name 3 bad decisions you've made when you were really angry. So, and that's you're 100% with everybody who's I've ever asked that question. We all kind of have that same reaction. And that shouting moment, because I didn't really think of that as something so simple, but just don't make decisions when you're angry. Stop, put your phone away, take a walk, go work out, take a drive, do whatever you need to do. But don't let yourself get into a destructive phone call or a text message. Do something, because if you can come back to calm, and for me, I would always beat myself up. I'm really tough on myself. I'm a perfectionist. I realized that really wasn't doing me any good, because anytime I would get thrown off, triggered, anything along that line, I thought I was reverting back or I wasn't progressing as I expected. And it's fine to feel the feeling. It's how fast can you get back to calm? When I realized it wasn't a black or white type thing and it was shades of gray, it's fine to be like, sometimes things happen to you. That's great. You need to cry. You need to get upset or yell out. That'll happen. It's then, can I get back to calm? And I made that competition with myself. I'm a big sports guy. I'm big into like really challenging myself. So I was like, that threw me off for 10 minutes. How can I get it down to 9 and then to 8? And it's just naturally of, you realize that then when you get anger, it's something from your past. You've had some type of trauma that you've not dealt with yet. And that's what's really coming out. When you know that's the source of it all, it's really easy. Now I become curious. Instead of just getting angry at myself, I'm like, why did I have that reaction to that?
You start getting more conscious of your trigger points, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you brought this up, because I can so relate to this, David, because I am too very critical of myself. And when I'm really angry, I used to just blow up and then feel terrible that I got so angry and put my family through that experience. So now I've learned how to observe and actually notify people around me that I'm not in the right frame of mind. I need my space. So let's not talk right now. The family appreciates it because they, hey, this is great. And we really appreciate you giving us a heads up. So we're not coming your way. Now, if it happens 4 times, 5 times a week, which it did, there's something that I'm working through. But if it then starts reducing from there, then you know, okay, you work through it and then you move on to the next. But David, I think it comes from intentional living, though. And a lot of us are in autopilot, right? And so it gets so hard. And that's one of the intentions why I wanted to start this podcast, to push people into challenging how they live their day to day. To then, at least if they can take a nugget from these conversations to say, let me take that away and think over why I reacted the way I did. Why do I feel like I fail all the time? Why do I feel I'm unlucky all the time? And I hear people around me say that constantly to themselves. That's such a valid point you raise. And so those who are sort of new to this, or when you start working with a client, what are the common misconceptions people have about mindset or rewiring the brain? What have you heard?
So I like to break it down. I get different types of, oddly enough, I work within the music industry, and then I also work in the business and finance industry. So I've worked longer in finance business. I went to college for that. I would think that would be easier. And that's actually the tougher one. Usually you have to reason it. I try to find some type of element of what they'll relate to. I had a recent female client who was coming in and she didn't understand what's happening. She's like, I don't get why mindset needs to be a thing. I was like, well, it's not when you're fine. When you're at a good baseline and you're in flow state, that's not the problem. It's when things get a little rocky and you have curveballs thrown at you or you have a tough day. How are you going to react to that? So many times we could have something set us back in life, and it could be personal or at the job. And any of those type of setbacks can make people go into long-term, like months of just being in a funk, not knowing how to talk about it. And it's one of those things that I wanted to start educating, because I knew on my end, my mom passed 11 years ago. And when she passed away, I saw her body. I knew she was dead. It wasn't like any mistake there, but I treated it like she was on vacation and I would see her again. It's odd that I ended up doing that, because weirdly I was right. It was my way of dealing with it at the time. I've always been someone, I store stuff. I store until I end up getting to a point where I get triggered and then I blow up. It's just a bad combo. So I would push stuff off. And with her, I was fine up front. I got over it pretty quick. And I thought that's what I needed to do. We all grieve differently. We have to grieve differently. We have to really find that way. And I got to the point of realizing how the power of letting go. And I always felt that would be too cold when someone spoke about it to me, but I was holding on to all these negative things, and that's what I needed to let go and focus on the positive. And I had someone really change the way I look at it. And now I see this in all the people that I've lost in some way or shape or form. I've had a lot of trauma that's gone on through my life. And I try to find the positives. I see the way my mom used to treat other people. And it's one of the coolest things when you combine those little things. I go into meditation and I think of really specific events of what I did. And when I was a kid with my mom, when she took me places, what we did, how she would act to people. And I see that kindness of her all over the place. And it's like, and I put it in again, manifesting is I'm thinking about, I want that reaction. And where I say that she did come back to me to some extent, it was the wildest story. I was working with my music team and we were making a song and we just got stuck. We couldn't finish the phrase of music. It was just stuck. And we said, let's sleep on it. We'll get back to it tomorrow. And it's a hip hop R&B type song. So it's obviously a specific kind of vibe of what we're going for. Mom trained me classically. She was like big into that side of everything, taught me piano and all that. So my mom has this musical theater, operetta, church voice, unmistakable. And go to meditate after that session. And we're saying we're going to sleep on it. And I end up sending a voice note to the guys about 5 minutes later because I figured it out. And the only reason I figured it out was I start meditating and I hear my mom in that voice thing what was missing there. And it was the coolest feeling because I was like, man, she's real. Like I was like, she's kind of here when I don't expect her. She's still always with me. Right. So I probably talk about her a ton. I talk about her every day. I meditate and think about her every day. I think that's the best way we can honor the people we love. I had all the sadness of everything that went through. I didn't get to tell her I love you as much as I wish I could have. And so this is my way of honoring that. It doesn't change the result of she's not physically here, but it's a whole lot better way to think about it day to day. I get sad about her once every month or two, whereas it was every day for a long time. So how can we channel that and find a way to let go? Because weirdly, it's that whole cliche. When you let go, it all kinds of comes flooding back to you.
Right. Wow, that's so powerful. And that moment, I think, when you realized that you can actually channel her and her presence, and then your life just started to expand. And that's beautiful. So you've supported so many creatives, David, and professionals and young adults through emotional mental blocks. What are some of the most common patterns you've seen? I mean, for me, I think naturally I see people just get into that negative mindset so easily when a little thing goes wrong. Is that the same, or have you seen something deeper, especially when you deal with some really talented people?
So it's the level of stress. I can tie this into what you said before, or what you had asked before of what causes it or what hits at people. And it's the level of stress. And I think we're living with this default mode network, autonomous zone. We're living with negativity in the world, things going on. Our cortisol levels have never been higher. People are stressed, and that's where you cut anybody off in traffic and everyone's snapping and losing it. And who's ever actually trying to hit a car? It's because we're looking at our phone, or it's usually an honest, innocent mistake that we all regret. So many people are high strung. It's a lot of that cortisol. And I like to use a sports example as well and then I also use a music example, depending on who it will coordinate to better. So obviously we're all familiar with when COVID happened. The NBA basketball league, they kept going through COVID. So they end up essentially renting out the whole Disney hotel complex where the teams that's where they had their playoffs that year in the finals. And as they're playing that, there's no crowd. Obviously, that's when everything was masked up. Everyone was home and you couldn't really go anything. So it was just the athletes who were already quarantined and they're playing the game. And they start seeing that 3-point percentage. People are shooting more threes than ever. And the percentage of what they're making is through the roof. And they're trying to figure it out. And I'm looking at it, I was saying it from day one. It's the mindset. It's literally, you took the away fans who can make noise or the home fans making noise, and you took that element out of it. So this ended up becoming to these players like practice. Oh, I've got no noise. This is easy for me. I don't have that stress. It's when you have the big meeting at work, you're going to be stressed about it. But when you're prepping for it the day before, you're more relaxed. It's not that big a deal. So that's literally what happened. And you saw like guys who ended up making a career for themselves because they figured that out as that was happening. And I say the same within musicians of when you get a crowd there, how do you perform? If one of your mics goes out and you can't hear your band, what are you going to do? And so when I talk to people, we start visualizing how we get through those things. That's more of a developed stuff. But when we have a problem initially, it's usually from some type of pressure or stress they've not encountered before. With some of my artists who had quick success and then scale back, we live in a society where everything feels like it needs to be always getting better every single year.
And always the hustle, productive expectation.
Yeah,
right?
Honestly, it's not realistic. And pressing and stressing about it is not going to make that situation better. Then you start looking at more of a lack. And that's why I say Now, when companies are looking to save their bottom line, usually cutting jobs is not a way to grow your business. That's not going to work out long term.
Yeah.
It's finding that balance and being okay with it. I just tried to change the mindsets there because everyone got so into this really scared bottom line mentality. If you're in the business world and even in music, the same thing happened there is, are you making money or not? And if you don't show any potential to make money quickly, labels aren't interested. So I think it's the biggest blessing for me because I'm getting to work with these talented indie artists who I swear if this was 10 years ago, they would have been signed by a label within a week. You have different fluctuations of how stuff goes and being prepared and being ready to go. I say with the whole letting go with the flow, find where the flow is and just roll with it. The more you try to fight against it, you're really going to struggle and have more tough times than better times.
Can totally resonate with this, David. To share an example of what I experienced when I started my podcast in September. Everyone's like, how are you going to monetize it? Why are you doing it? Have you even thought about what's the point of doing a podcast? So what, you're just going to have conversations with people? And then what? I'm like, can we not just be in wonder and talk to different people without expecting to monetize?
Yeah.
Why is that expectation so high? It's interesting because it's rewiring my own mindset to shift away from everything doesn't have to be about making money. It's also about finding that wonder in life and finding that joy when you do these interviews.
It's amazing you're doing what you're doing. I love to see that you have the same mentality of if you can help one person, you're doing some good in the world. I really believe in the trickle down effect. If you do one thing positive, you're sending a ripple out that's going to help other people. Sometimes we don't always know why, and we won't be able to figure it out or monetize it. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Majority of the things in my life, and I look back fondly with my mom, we grew up very, very poor. And there was so much love there. I didn't realize we were poor until I was in college. My mom hid that from me. And I felt nothing but love and just that what I had was enough. For others, it might not be enough, but I always say if you have one person who believes in you and loves you, you can pretty much do anything and have a great view of the world. So I love that you're doing that because you're putting that ripple out there in a big way.
Thank you, David. And that's a good segue into shifting a bit of our conversation towards what can people do as a micro practice. I know in the beginning you said you want to talk about some daily practices that we can implement in our lives. And so can you expand on that and share a short micro practice to help all of us reset our mind and mindset?
Sure. So this one, it could be just a couple minutes every day. I would start if we close our eyes and we breathe for 3, hold for 3, breathe out for 3. Do that 2 more times. Breathe in for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 3. One more. Breathe in for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 3. Think of a moment from your childhood where you were just happy. No expectations. It could just be someone made you feel really good. Someone told you they cared about you or what you were doing. Think about the person you loved most growing up. Think about how they made you feel every time they talked to you. Okay. Now we're going to think of 3 things of what we want to accomplish over this next week. What's one thing that's been bugging you and tough that you'd like to start finding ways to get progress on that and hopefully complete it, whether it's this week or you're on progress to complete it by the end of this month? What's one thing at home you can do once you open your eyes that will be a quick task you can finish? And then third, what's one thing that you really want to accomplish by the end of this year? Breathe in for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 3. All right. So that's how
it just feels like such a completion when you take that last breath after you think of the 3 things. That is so powerful and such a quick recentering exercise. Thank you, because my thoughts are like all these questions I need to ask you, and it was all over the place. Now I feel so centered.
Oh, I'm glad that worked. Thank you. It's one of those. It's a way that you can help sync your brain and your heart together. So the natural breathing, and then thinking about gratitude. Gratitude is one of the best ways for you to sync how that all happens. And a really cool thing, and this is something that everyone could apply on an everyday basis, notice it first, but really apply it, is the same part of your brain that processes gratitude is the same part of your brain that processes anger, frustration, sadness, depression. It really can only operate like a one in, one out mentality. So if you start feeling one of those nasty emotions, think about what you're grateful for. And trust me, you're going to have a little bit where you're frustrated and you don't really want to get into it. You're like, not now. And it's that, but it's a way that,
And there's this whole
yeah.
pushback,
And
right?
I'd say it's like the
Yes.
more I feel that, I actually chase into that now. Is that something that
Right.
usually that is a neuroplasticity thing? Our body wants to be automated. Think of it, our body likes to be lazy. It doesn't want to do the hard thing. So it's always going to push that back. And the more we can really lean into those feelings and find those different things that we can add in. So when you're upset, what am I grateful for? And try to think back to those specific moments because it will really just lock in. Okay. It literally just helps you reframe where you're at just on a chemistry level of figuring out I'm in this heightened state of anger. Let me calm down, get back and really relax and get back to that where you were calm right after the breathing exercise.
And I think for me too, David, when I got into this practice, and there was a very difficult period in my life as an adult, I think one that I distinctly remember because that really shifted the way I approach things is I literally took pen and paper and I said, I'm going to sit down here as uncomfortable as I get to write down what am I grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very uncomfortable, like you said, because all you wanted to do was scream, shout, be angry, hate the world, think you're the victim,
Yeah.
and just go through that process, feeling horrible about everything. But the minute you start writing, and I want to say the magic number was 3, like after 3 things that I was grateful for, something switched. And then I couldn't stop myself but do it every day now. So when I go to bed, and even if I'm still angry about something, I thank my pillow, I thank my sheets. But then it's the fact that I'm not focused on the negative then, right? And I'm still focused on the feeling of gratitude at that point. So I love that you raised that. And what does emotional resilience look like then with this sort of practice?
Yeah. So emotional resilience really falls into when we were talking before about the how quick can you get back to calm is we're going to fail and it's okay with failing. The most successful people have failed and really done their best work after failing at something. It's very social media and how society's kind of gotten to us. It was keeping up with the Joneses in the 90s and 2000s. And now it's the social media age of everything is perfect. And you've got to be always doing bigger and better or something great. It's not realistic. A lot of people aren't living that life they show. It's a great highlight reel, but reality, can you share the stuff of when you're down? And I think it's also affected by social relationships of how we treat our friends and things like that. Because I really love to say that if you're a true friend of mine, you better call me when you're having a downtime. I'll be there for you. If I just need to listen and be a soundboard of what you need, that's what friends are for. We've gotten to a society, especially men around my age, that they just don't like to talk about the emotions or get things out. And that just continues and trend keeps things negative. When you really can get that out, you can process and move forward and find a way around it. So many people are just content with being frustrated and angry. It's something that I think is also like a relationship type thing of finger pointing or scorekeeping. If everything is, I did this because of that person. At what point are we responsible for ourselves? If someone does really something really messed up to you, it is, but it's my parents raised me of just because they did it doesn't mean you react. That doesn't give you free will to go back at someone. Sometimes you just have to realize, yeah, what they did was bad and you got to let it go.
Want to kind of unpack a little bit what you said about you tell a lot of men around you as well to be more expressive and talk about these things. I had an interesting discussion with a bunch of friends, and one of the male friends, we were talking about my podcast and stuff, and I was like, hey, have you listened to any episode and what do you think? And coincidentally, I think the first 4 episodes were women, right? Women guests. And so his natural reaction was, oh, yeah, your podcast is dedicated to women. I was like, no, that's not true. My welcome video specifically said, I'm interested in all things human, not just men or women. And even when people were asking me, find your niche, get really specific, I was like, I love all things human. I don't want to chase a niche because that's the best thing to do. It was interesting that especially the male friends had a comment that mindset shift, transformation, reprogramming, etc., is a very female focused thing. Do you experience that too, David, in your
For
practice?
sure. My biggest obstacle was men who think they don't need to or that it's a sign of weakness. And I let them know I was
Mm,
just like them. A lot of them come from an athletic background where you bury everything and just deal with it. It's always kind of in that range. I let people know I lost people who were important and vital to me. Doing all that made me so much worse. It raised the stress levels in my body. It made me sick. It made me lose my hair. Like I go down the list of everything. So I'm like, at what point I'm like, would you rather talk about it now or 30 years from now where you say, hey, I regret I didn't talk to you sooner because I could have done A, B, and C. I just very realistic with it. I was like, I'm not going to promise anything that won't be out there. But if you don't talk about it or process it to me or anyone, you're going to make it way worse. The body keeps the score. You're hurting yourself by going that route with it. So luckily it's become,
is it because you think men feel like you're failing somewhere or you're falling down in people's eyes if you're actually, I guess, accept that there's something wrong that you're working
yeah,
through?
I was raised that you don't back down from anything. It's always follow through, even if it's in a toxic situation. And I was able to kind of start realizing, hey, I was in some of those situations that weren't good. What's the point? As I realized I was as lonely as I could be when I didn't talk to anybody. And then when I went to therapy
Mhm.
and started going through that and found again what was like making me happy in life, I look back, I say it for my end. I'm 41 now. I'm like, man, if I would have done this 20 years ago, I can't imagine what I could have done. And I still feel like I've got my whole life in
Mm,
front of me. It can just change your whole perspective of everything. I let people know I'm like, you could be as miserable as you want, and it's not going to make the pain any better. We have this, and I think it runs into that whole grind culture of we need to grind to be able to accomplish our goals and do whatever. And if it's always in that mentality, then it's always, all right, I need to grind through this situation and just roll through. And yeah, it's not healthy. And also, I think it's a pattern of, I know my parents, because of their parents, my grandparents, that it was like mental health's not a real thing. Those people said that. And
we all grew up hearing
yeah.
that.
And so, and obviously we know it's something that people can use an excuse or whatever. But what I think is like, it's not really an excuse. It explains why we think and what we do the way we do. We're all very different, but we all are also so connected or could be so connected. And if we understand each other's differences better, it will really open up what we're trying to do. If you're talking about wars or any conflict, I'll always be the go-between. I agree with this side, and I'm partially on this side, and I'm part on this side. And how do we meet in the middle? We could be as mad as we want, and that's not fixing the issue. It's finding that middle ground is what actually will help things. Realize I'll ask people, and sometimes our sessions will be 5 seconds. I'm like, "Are you still mad? Yeah. Do you want to work about it or do anything? Nope." I'm like, "All right, talk to you next week." And eventually, most will come around, and it's just one of those. Especially if they see somebody close to them who's had an impact, that it makes it more real for them. That person went through what I went through or knows my background. For whatever reason, when we
Mm,
feel like someone understands us, it kind of opens up and
mhm.
lets us be more vulnerable and open. If you have a friend who gets your vibe and you guys connect on a level, there's certain people where you feel like you could spill your whole life to on the first night, and then other people you never trust. So it's just kind of like
Right.
that mentality of when do you feel comfortable? I do whatever I can to make that person as comfortable as possible because if they're uncomfortable in any setting, they're not going to really share what's bothering them. So it's how can we find a comfort level? How can we find some type of way that we can communicate and actually get to a common understanding of where we want to get as a goal? Then everything kind of comes together from there.
Amazing. I love that. And I also love that you said earlier that resilience isn't about never failing or never falling, but it's about learning how to rise faster each time and maintaining that calm next time you fall, because you won't look at it as a failure or a fall, but it's more information that you can work through then,
Yeah.
right? Amazing. And David, before we move to the close, I want to talk about your upcoming
Mm.
book, Navigate the
Mhm.
Noise. It's coming out in 2026. Can you tell us what inspired this book and what is it really about?
Sure. So it actually came from one of the musicians that I work with. I always give mindset tips or neuroscience tips when they're applicable in our music sessions. One of my artists said, you make some stuff really simple that I wouldn't understand otherwise. Then they said, you should write a book. I didn't think much of it. Months later, I had a week off for vacation in Florida. I got inspired and started writing it. And I wrote it specifically at that from seventh grade on up that they can understand it. They won't understand 100% of it, but they'll
Mhm,
understand big chunks of it. I wanted to make it that it
mhm,
was at a base level, but then also adults at 40 and up would really connect to some extent. It's all using what's going on in neuroscience, what people are using, epigenetics of how stress levels can affect our genes and turn off genes that we aren't even activating to make ourselves better. So it goes into all that, the littlest things of what we can do. And I just wanted to get it out there for as many people as possible because it's the type of book that if I was in middle school or high school, it really would have helped me a ton to realize a lot of the parenting that I missed from my dad and a lot of the upbringing of why we think like this. I got diagnosed with ADHD late in life. Man, I didn't realize that I was going through that. I just thought something was wrong with me, or I just knew I was different. It's negative when you're different. It's something that I always held as I thought it made me weird or that people didn't like me for it. And now I wear it as a badge of honor. I think it's one of the coolest things about me. It's when you can figure it out about yourself and how you start hacking. I've gone through little things that I can really just make myself better on a day to day. Whereas I would go through funks otherwise. And this is, I realized there was a really high level, especially with creatives, of there's a line of a lot of ADHD there as well. So when I had that,
and a lot of them are probably even undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And it's not about giving everything a label, but I think it helps giving the label to then understand how to manage it every day. I think that's the most important
well,
part.
it's you're not really ever going to take it seriously. So someone could have told me about it and not know the background. It might not have made much of a difference when I was younger, but it really just hit me years ago. There's just like, oh, this is why I can really focus on something and then I can't focus on something for the next 2 hours and I feel exhausted. I realized meditation got me there faster. That's what got me to a doctor to get diagnosed because meditation made me realize, oh, my thoughts really do race. And they only slow down when I was in meditation. I was like, how can I get that more often? As I started talking about that, the doctors were like, oh, yeah. It was just plain as day because of what we talked about with mental health earlier. I didn't have anything severely wrong with me. And I was pretty successful and I was doing well. I just could have been doing better. I was just like kind of operating at 70-75% capacity. And a lot of us are essentially working at a capacity that isn't at our 100%. We don't have our personal iPhone or for our body charged up to 100. And a lot of that is you could be taking the right supplements or doing little small things, how your sleep patterns work and having set schedules. It really could just take you from that 70-75% to that 100%. And you feel like you're a superhuman when you start thinking on that level.
And so I'm going to digress a bit because you mentioned your ADHD diagnosis, David. So before you got to know about your diagnosis, and as you said, you found it really difficult to sit down and focus on one thing, and then it would just go off track on multiple things. What do you do differently now? For listeners who are diagnosed with ADHD, I think it's really going to help.
Yeah, I have to have clear boundaries and schedules with things. And then also tell the people around. One of my things is, and I know I do it, and I hate that it's something, but when I am in flow state and I'm locked in, you could be talking in or around me and I'm just kind of yesing whoever it is. I can come off as cold and I don't mean to do it. But when I'm locked in on that thing, I always say if it's a distraction or something along that line, I need 2 to 3 seconds to catch up. When I'm getting hit by too many things at one point, that initial task is gone. I'm very big on working on the bigger thing. And if it's a smaller task, then yeah, give it to me and I'll knock it out real quick if it's like just a 1-2 minute thing. But it's finding the way. So it's always, I started putting myself on a schedule of certain tasks of making sure that I at least revisit that at the end of the day, just because it's something that whatever I'm in, I'm 100% laser focused. But the only problem with that is you get exhausted fast. The crazy thing is that I always try to tell everyone who I've worked for or worked with have seen this result from me is that I can do probably an 8 or 10 hour day for most people. I can do in 2 to 3 hours. That's the amount of output I can produce. But after those 2 or 3 hours, I am cooked. It's the give and take of how to manage the burnout. And I've leaned into that. A big thing, and I've got this is not an ad. It's just a product that I like that I use. It's called, it's a pulsetto. It's for your neck. It's a vagus. I realized that I had some damage to my vagus nerve. And by stimulating that at night, it helps calm down. It lets me fall asleep faster. I had the issue of, which was an ADHD symptom of when I would lay down, it was like my brain booted up. My body was going down to rest and my brain just is ready to go and is ready to fire off. And having the vagus stimulator really lets your brain and body relax and be in sync. But that was me for years. My body was running the show. My brain was along for the ride. And I've been able to fine tune everything. So it's the opposite. You just have so much more control over little things that you're doing on a day to day.
Amazing. So coming back to your book, David, what do you hope readers and listeners take away from it when they pick it up?
That whatever your limiting belief is, whatever I can't, I fail, I always fail, this doesn't work out for me, whatever that story is, it doesn't need to be the story all the time. I was confused in a lot of my life thinking that was the only way to think because that's just who I was. So much of what we do is programmed or is something that we've learned to automate. And there are ways that we can unwind that. Until you're in the late ages of life, you have neuroplasticity. The cool thing is it's possible. What I want to do with this book is show people not only is it possible, it's not hard. I always thought it would be way too much work or way too hard to reprogram. It is uncomfortable at first, but you realize how much better and how much easier the level of stress. I look back now, I'm almost ashamed of the levels of stress I was living and operating at. I was on a one-way ticket to either have some type of really bad health issue or probably cancer. And it was just one of those stress on stress. Realizing that was a problem, I needed to find the things that did stress me out and start limiting them, as well as trying to remove them where I could, but at least limiting what was on that day to day, because I just couldn't keep functioning in that fashion. I think a lot of people are hitting that burnout anxiety. If you can unwind that now, the younger you are, the easier it is to unwind these things. That's why I wanted to target kids, especially post-COVID, attention after COVID. We were stuck at home. We were looking at our phone or binging whatever was on TV. It was cheap dopamine, and our bodies got really used to that. We haven't adjusted since we came back out of COVID. We've gotten better, but it's not to where it was. It just really hit another level. So it's little small changes that we can introduce just to let people know. People will say social media is bad. How can we explain that in a really easy way using neuroscience and shortening your attention span? I like to use the example of if you have a child and they say, I want ice cream, and you just give them that right away. I want to watch a movie, give it to them right away. There's no delayed gratification. Some of the best things we have is when we asked our parents for a present, or we really wanted to get something and we work towards it. And it means something when you get something. If it's just handed to you, it doesn't have that same effect. So that's what social media and COVID did to everyone's brains, is that it just made that here's everything. Here's all the movies. Here's all the TV shows. Watch whatever you want. No delayed gratification. And that's a big thing in life. We need that to some extent. So that has really been affected. And this is the ways that kids, like, I'm hoping parents will read it, but also kids can read it and be like, I don't like how my life is right now. This is small things I can do to live in a more positive way day to day.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I've dedicated my social media page of LifeVision Lab to really trigger some deep intentional thinking, David, because there's so much content out there that reduces your attention span, or that quick dopamine fix, that there aren't enough where we actually push people for intentional living. So I love that you brought that up. And I love that you're helping people tune back into their own inner signal instead of that noise around them.
Absolutely.
My last question for you before we wrap up. What's the message you want to share with men listening today, especially for those who've been taught to stay strong but might be silently struggling inside? What's the first step? What's your message and the first step they can take?
Journaling. And by journaling, I mean write something down, even if it's a voice note or if it's on the notes on your iPhone, or if you talk, like, whatever works for you. Especially what's bothering you or what's frustrating you to some extent. It was something that I uncovered on myself by doing this. I thought I'm the first person. I was the poster boy of saying journaling is stupid. You get no benefit out of it. I went through something really hard in my life at a certain point, and I said to my therapist, I can't keep going like this. I am so sad. I don't know how to react every day. And that was her thing to me. And I didn't get it. I was mad. Like, that's your reaction to it? I didn't get it. But I did it, and I followed through. I was like, what do I've got to lose? Let me try to figure this out. And by journaling, I thought I was sad every day. She was like, okay, she saw me a month later. She was like, go through the last month. How many times did you write down that you were sad? Some of it was just like, today was nothing great happened, nothing bad happened. So it was just kind of like no real update. Some of those were some of the days something good happened.
And it was the story you were telling yourself 100%. That you were sad every day.
And so our perception could be so thrown off. Recency bias is the thing of thinking just because something happened recently, it happens all the time. It's not always the case. It took me reading my journal in my own words to say, oh, I was only upset 2 days out of those 30. That's once every other week. It just really normalized something. And it happens to a lot of us. Sometimes we think some irrational things. We all do. It happens. That's why we have a filter where we don't say everything we think, because not everything should be said. But yeah, it's being able to know that and see that. That's when I started doing it with my thoughts too. Really getting those down. And I'm like, oh, I should not. I was like, why is that? And then you really start asking those questions. And for me, I got so fascinated of why do people think the way they do? And when I realized there's the neuroscience side of what happened to you if you had trauma and how you react. And these are defense mechanisms that you build up. And this is how we tend to react the same way with a lot of things. It really opened my eyes from seeing that end of it. This is a very long answer, but in general, journal. It's helped so many people that have said, get stuff out. If you're not getting it out, it's stuck and festering in you. So finding some way to be able to get it out of your system.
I love that. It's simple, doable, and powerful. David, thank you for such an insightful and timely conversation. You've given us so much to think about and a lot of hope for what's possible. I think you've given us a way of believing that we are indeed lucky and we can co-create our own lives. And a lot of people, I think, would have some of the questions that they had answered through our conversation. And for those who want to stay connected, where can people find you and follow your work and keep an eye out for your book, Navigate the Noise?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Instagram, David McKee on LinkedIn, Instagram, David McKee 84, as well as Another Angle Consulting.
Amazing. And I'll link it down below in the description box. And to everyone listening, remember, clarity begins with compassion for where you are and courage to rewire what comes next. Stay warm, stay grounded, and take care of your inner world no matter how cold it gets outside. Until next time, I am Shweta, and this is Life Vision Lab Podcast.